Hi, Kim, and welcome to the Calm and Courageous podcast, a parent's guide to powerful allyship and raising children with disabilities. Welcome. I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you so much for having me. Good
I-
morning. How are you?
I'm well. I'm well. I'm so excited to do this with you. I'm going to read your bio. Kim Ransom is a graduate of Wayne State University, Detroit, Michigan, and Loyola Marymount University. Kim has been a public school educator for 41 years and has worked in multiple states and supported various charities associated with disabilities. She has worked as an elementary school, middle, and high school teacher, and she was an adjunct professor at Purdue University and earned community awards for her work in special education. Kim has been nominated as Teacher of the Year in two districts and was the Administrator of the Year in 2018-2019 District Administrator of the Year for her current district and Administrator of the Year in 2019-2020 with ACSA Region 14. Kim has been honored by several organizations, including the City of Los Angeles, for her support for special education. She is a retired director of special education and current expert legal witness for special education and small business owners. Thank you so much. I am so honored to have somebody with your expertise and experience on our
Sure.
show
I'm glad to share.
and years of service. We need more people who have a heart for special education and families who are just trying to navigate a system that is not always easy to understand.
Absolutely.
And parents want to give their kids the best. And even when it sometimes feels like they don't, because some parents aren't as proactive. I was just talking with someone who works in the field of deaf education, particularly working with Black
hmm
African American families. And she,
hmm
a lot of times people will think that parents don't care when they're not proactive, but it's oftentimes they're paralyzed because they're afraid to make the wrong choice or they just don't know how to navigate it or go about it.
That is the paralysis is the issue. And
Yes.
that's in every community. They experience the same because when you have a child, you don't think that you're going to have a child with a disability. You think you're having a baby, period. Nothing more. And that's what you prepare for. And this is a different type of preparation.
Yeah, it's true.
But no one says this. This is a very different preparation.
What inspired you to become a special education teacher?
My eldest cousin is has cerebral palsy.
Mm.
He weighed 12 pounds when he was born, and they used forceps to assist in his birth, and it damaged the motor part of his brain. And so he walked with a limp. To us, he was not disabled. He said he found out he was disabled when he went to school. And so, and we refer to him as probably the brightest of us because he's an attorney. He's retired attorney now. He was a Section 504 attorney for the state of Michigan
Oh,
with cerebral palsy. So, um, very interesting dynamics and kind, generous man, but very well versed.
yeah. People, I think parents need to hear more stories like this because when you get a child, no matter what the disability is, with all of your children, you think about their future.
Absolutely.
You start even daydream about who they could become or what they'll do with their life. And I don't think parents realize that a disability, and I choose to use the word disability, not everyone does. Some people
Right.
are differently abled, some people choose not to use it. We decided to take the word disability and be proud of it. We
Not
don't
a bad word.
we don't see it as a bad word. So I'll use it throughout the show and Because
I have always used it. I mean, a disability can also be an enhancement to your ability.
yeah,
So, you have to keep looking at it from that perspective. And I think his parents handled it really well because we lived in Michigan. He has cerebral palsy. He's going to fall.
oh
And
yeah,
they would say, okay, he also has to get up,
wow,
and
yeah,
all of you will not be there.
wow.
And so let him get up. And he did. And so that was the beginning of my career. But I have to say, the first time I fell in love with my career was I was at an elementary school, and there was a student there they referred to as Kermit. And he should have been much larger. He was a preschool class. He should have been the size of a toddler. He was actually about the size of an 8-month old. And he was crying. And I said, well, somebody should pick him up. And I just leaned over and picked him up. And they said, he doesn't let many people touch him.
Mm.
And that was just for volunteer hours for the university, because at that time I had intended on going to dental school. Very different route.
And then, but you fell in love. You realized, hey, I've got a special touch, and I've got a heart for this.
It was just, it was like that moment, that light bulb moment where this is where you need to be. And so that's when I changed my major.
Do you feel like you had any major challenges navigating
Oh,
the system?
tons, tons. Um, because I was idealistic. And so, when you come into a career, it's like, I'm going to change the world. And I came in with that attitude, and it was a blessing and a curse, and probably more of a curse for like my administrators than it was for me, because I wasn't aware of everything that they had to go through to help me do some of the things I wanted to do.
Oh yeah, there's so much red tape, right?
Lots of red tape, lots of red tape. And sometimes I think parents think you're dragging your feet, when in actuality, I'm just moving it from one desk to the next desk to the next desk so that I can accomplish what I need to accomplish. But I think the biggest drawback for parents is, I think they think because you're employed by the district that your sole purpose is what's good for the district. You're an employee of the district. However, you also have to live with the ethics of what you do. And so those are your children when they're at your house. I'm parent in locus when they're at my house. And so most teachers think of it that way. They would never let anything happen to one of their children.
Mhm. Yeah.
And I think that's the piece that parents don't get. It's like, okay, I've had this fight. I've gone through the ropes. I know the answer will be no, but if you need me to do that again, I'll do it again.
Wow. Wow. Have you seen that? But okay, you've retired now.
Yes,
Okay, but you're still involved in the community. You're still active.
absolutely.
Have you seen it evolve over the years from when you started to how it looks now, the special education system?
Yes, and that's probably one of my bigger fears now that we're talking about the dismantling of the education department. The Department of Ed is like the grandparent that is over you, watching everything that you're doing to make sure that you stay within the legal ramifications of the law. However, when we talk about dismantling it, I think most people don't even realize that the special education law didn't go into effect until 1975.
Most people don't know.
And no, they don't. And so with that going in 1975, what does that look like without grandma standing there and saying, "Oh no, you can't do that. That's illegal." And does that mean that it becomes the responsibility of every state to develop their own law? So 50 laws, and
Every
if you move,
and
it changes each time. I mean, as it is, we're not consistent, because California has regional centers. I grew up in Michigan. Michigan does not have regional centers. However, Michigan does a great job with um, self-determination piece. California is just developing their self-determination piece. So, I mean, we piggyback off of each other's states, However, do we really want 50 different special ed laws, or do we really need one central law? Um, Early days, they could send students home and tell you not to bring them back because they weren't suited for school.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
My very early career in Long Beach, they had institutions still when I started.
Wow, wow.
And so, yeah,
Wow.
this is in the 80s. And so they had private institutions and, well, state-run institutions, and people would actually place their children who had multiple disabilities that were impacted cognitively.
Yeah,
And they would just place them and walk away. I
yeah.
mean, they'd see them, but it wasn't, it's not the same as when a child lives at home and receives that love and support. And I'm not saying that every child should stay at home, because as a special ed director, as a special ed coordinator and program specialist, I place kids in out-of-state placements
Yeah.
because they socially, emotionally, they needed that type of support. And you're grateful when they come back home because, like I said, you are still parent and locus. I don't care how that looks. No one wants to send their child away.
No, no, they don't. And it's kind of scary now. You hear a lot of rhetoric around autism and children being on the spectrum. And speaking of institutions, a lot of that was because parents, and from what I understand, didn't have the support to help their
No,
children.
no, there weren't any supports in those days. I mean, in those days, it was pretty. I mean, the curriculum for special ed was mostly teacher led
Yeah.
because no one really knew what to do. And so teachers who had great skills came in and did great things. And my battery is low. I need to. Oh my God, how do I do that? Ashley,
Yeah.
my battery is low.
Oh,
Can I?
you want to grab your charger? No
Yes,
problem.
please.
No problem.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Can you cut this?
no problem.
Okay. Thank you.
I will talk a little bit to the audience about what we're talking about right now is how children in the past were institutionalized instead of given services that they needed at home. Parents would be afraid and scared or just frustrated. And a lot of that is rooted in ableism. Oftentimes communities don't support families who have children with disabilities because of the way that we view disability, the way that we view that difference. And so instead of giving you the support, giving you access, giving you accommodations, parents would institutionalize their children or send them away. And there was always so much shame around it too, around disability.
It,
And
it,
so how we
it,
talk about it, how we talk about autism, how we talk about Down syndrome, how we talk about hearing loss or body difference, cerebral palsy, all of these things matter because that will determine how we support a child and a family, how we look at what they're dealing with.
I have to tell you, the first time I said, when you're a teacher, you're working through the IEPs, you're writing the IEPs, you're collecting the data, and the data piece becomes important. Looking at previous IEPs becomes important. Parent input. Parents who sit there silently and say nothing. No, this is a team effort. We all work together.
Right.
Um, Becomes important. But I had the opportunity to be on the other side of the fence.
Mm.
And it was the first year I retired. And my cousin has a son who has autism.
Okay.
And I was asked to attend his IEP.
Oh, wonderful.
And so as I'm sitting there, I'm watching, and it's funny, I kept thinking in my head, I hope that I never did this to a parent. I
Mm.
hope I never rushed them through an IEP. I hope I never asked for I hope I always asked for their input.
Um,
I hope I was more, not just professional, but kind in
yeah,
my delivery,
yeah,
because you can only hear so many negative things so many times in one year.
yeah, yeah. It's true.
And so when do you and so as we're going through this meeting, my question was, so can you tell me what he does well?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think to me, that should be the beginning of your meeting after you've done your your housekeeping, so the restrooms, and we'll take a break and parent rights and introductions. And then we talk about what's done well.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then we talk about what we could do better.
And whatever progress they're making, no matter how small, let's celebrate.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's one of the things
Absolutely.
I had to learn as a parent was that, oh, okay, I can't put my children on the timeline with other children. And I'm gonna have to celebrate when I let that go, when I said, okay, it's not gonna look typical. This your language development, particularly with my oldest, as you know, we have five, we have our nephew, he's 18, and then we have my oldest son, he's 8, he's hearing. Elijah, he is 6, he's hard of hearing. Isla, 4, hard of hearing, and then Eris, who's our youngest, she'll be 2 tomorrow, and she is hearing. So 2 who are hearing and 2 who are hard of hearing. I kept expecting, if we're doing what the audiologists and what the speech pathologists are telling us, then their language should be on par with their hearing peers. But that was definitely not the case with
Mm-mm.
a 6-year-old. And with Isla, she is more she just she speaks more fluently, more with spoken language,
Okay.
but Elijah does better with ASL. So when I'm home with him now, my voice is off and I only use ASL because this gives him more access to language. He enjoys it. He doesn't get frustrated. And I think people don't understand that it's not so much the ear, it's the brain, and everyone's brain perceives sound differently. And so I'm saying all that to say when I was like, I'm just gonna have to follow your lead and accept who you are, all of
That's
that
right.
went away, all of that frustration went away. And so parents have to accept their children for who they are and follow their lead. And when you have an educator or a professional working with you that also sees it that way, and this is partnership, it is magical.
It is magical. It is magical. Those parents that I connected with at that level, all these years later, I still have in my cell phone and I still get text messages and I still text them. So those are the relationships that are built to support a child that over a lifetime. Of skill building. And occasionally I get calls from students who will say, I remembered you gave me your cell phone number. It's still okay to call, right? It's like, yeah, it's still okay to call, you know. And so you develop, it's all relational.
Yeah,
It is not, it's not a separate, isolated situation. It's not me against you. It's us working together as a team to develop the skills of a child. Period.
yeah,
Nothing more.
yeah,
It gets frustrating when you provide a service for one parent and I used to call them the parking lot parents, and they compare what's being provided by a district. Well, sometimes that comparison isn't fair because even in your own family with your own children, they don't all get the same thing.
no,
So they should not all receive the same thing.
yeah. I say
And
this.
if they are receiving the same thing, I have concerns.
Yeah, yeah. I say that to my oldest all the time. You guys aren't the same. So
No.
you're not going to get the same privileges. You're not going to get the same. You're just not the same. And when you get older, you'll see that. And you worry because you don't want them to feel like they're being slighted but you
No.
always have to understand. And that's the case for
Uh, I applaud you
me.
for learning sign language. That was one of the first things I learned when I started working with students who had hearing loss, is that they were using ASL in school and then they would go home and no one would speak to them. So if we were down for a weekend, no one spoke to them for the weekend. If they were down for a week, no one spoke for a week because no one in the household ever learned sign language. So we had a principal who requested that we teach our parents sign language.
And that is a big deal because what you'll find in the deaf and hard of hearing community is that it's often divided. So
Absolutely.
you'll have one community that says, like, for my 3-year-old, she's in a listening and spoken language preschool program. Well, she's 4 now, but they don't use sign language. It's everyone in the class is aided, and it's heavy emphasis on listening and spoken language.
Mhm.
And she's an old school teacher.
But
She's been,
she's thriving.
yeah, she's been, her teacher's been doing it for 40 plus years. And so she's a
Hmm.
old school DHH teacher.
Okay.
But what I found is when I speak, and every parent has to take, navigate this their own way. But whenever I
Hmm.
talk to deaf adults, or whenever, because I'm on a few Facebook pages where I'll just watch and listen to their conversations, or I'll ask questions and get feedback from deaf adults, or people who are raising children, or who have raised children who are deaf and hard of hearing. You'll oftentimes hear them say, "I wish that I had learned sign language earlier on." Yes, I develop speech. Yes, I'm a professional, but I don't always wear my hearing aids. I don't always have my cochlears. And
Right.
I can't always express myself fully with spoken language. And I wish I had that additional piece with ASL. And so that's why I decided right away I was gonna do the best I could. And it's not easy, right? Because
No, it's not.
it's a language.
It's not easy. It's challenging, but you have to take into account, you have to be a great listener,
Yeah,
and you have to do what's in the best interest of your children. And so keeping your child silent for a whole week without any type of communication,
it's hard.
it's hard. And using signs that are made up and pointing at things when they can actually communicate. And I think people forget that ASL is actually considered a second language,
Has its own grammar, its own rules. Yeah.
has its own grammar and own rules. And so learning another language is good. We encourage our children all the time to learn another language. So why not learn ASL?
Yeah. Yeah. I
Um,
I wish that more people did. When I started to learn more about the deaf community, and it is such a beautiful culture. And just to be a spectator and an ally, I always say as a parent, I'm hearing, so I can't speak for the deaf community.
right. No, you cannot. And I can't either.
I'm an ally, and I'm
Hmm.
so honored that I can be just alongside it. And I really want my kids to have that sense of self and that pride and that
And
identity,
confidence,
confidence. Yeah,
confidence in themselves. I think that was the expectation that I set every year,
confidence.
was that I want my students to walk away from me with a little more confidence.
That's good.
And so it's that feeling that because I remember like my 3rd year teaching, I had a student who said, "Don't you know we're LD? Did anyone tell you that?" Because he felt like I was giving too much work.
And
And
that's
I said, so,
a limiting belief that he had.
very much so. And I said, "So what does LD mean?" And he said, the other teacher told me it means literally dumb.
Oh,
And that was my year of, okay, every student walks away from me with more confidence. So let's build on this.
yeah.
And so we talked about what we did well. And I feel like over the years, I learned how to have students walk into their own IEPs and say, "This is what I do well. I am excellent in English, but I am not good in math."
Oh, wow.
And I that's important for each student to be able to express that in their IEP and for it to be written into the IEP.
Yeah. That
And then we observed a district who even went beyond that and actually had the students say, "Who do you want invited to your IEP?"
Mm.
Because that's different too.
Mm.
It's funny when students make the determination of who gets invited to their IEP, they're invited who they perceive as their team.
Mm.
Now, hard part is when students become 18, they do have the option of saying they don't want their parents present.
Oh, and that's hard for parents, I'm sure.
And it's hard for the administrator who has to ask them to leave.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, not exactly the best feeling,
Oh, man.
but if that is the request, that is the request. And so you have to abide by that because most of our students are not conserved.
Oh,
The ones that would be conserved would be our students with the cognitive disabilities. And
yeah.
I would encourage parents, if they have a student who has a cognitive disability that limits them in their life, they need to conserve.
Okay. Okay. Um, just you talking about earlier about as parents need to be good listeners, and as teachers, you want to build confidence in your students and confidence in the parents too. What do you think are some skills and qualities that are essential for the success in the field? For a professional who's coming into the field, a young teacher, a young administrator, what are some skills and qualities you think they need to have?
Those good listening skills,
Listening,
empathy,
empathy.
empathy. And remember, I'm at, when I retired, everyone kept saying, I will miss you saying kids first. Because to me, as a professional, kids first.
Yeah.
I receive a paycheck. Parents take them home, their responsibility. At school, kids first. Everything is about them. And we try and build on their skill base. Um, don't be afraid to work hard because as much as people think teaching is easy, I think we found out during the pandemic it wasn't so easy.
Oh no.
uh, don't be afraid to work hard and don't expect to leave at 3 o'clock. Your job doesn't end at 3 o'clock. Um, be willing to call parents with something good. Don't always call with the negative. Call and say one thing. I had a principal who encouraged us to call 5 parents in a week and say 5 positive things.
Oh my gosh. That's so
Do
beautiful.
you know what that was like for the parent who has a kid with a behavioral disorder?
Yeah. Yeah.
And you're calling and saying, today was a great day.
Yeah. My oldest or my 6-year-old who's hard of hearing would have behaviors. And so we didn't know if he had multiple disabilities, if there was more going on, you know. Initially they felt like, okay, he may be on the spectrum when he was 2.5. After he went to preschool for a couple of years, the preschool decided, okay, we're not seeing any more of those behaviors. Through Kaiser, he still has an autism diagnosis. At school, he doesn't. We, it doesn't, yeah, I know. And that's kind of a lot of people are, for us, you can have it or not have it. We celebrate whether, we're not afraid of disability or autism. So with that said, but it does help us to go, okay, how do we serve him? What does he really need? And those behaviors he wasn't exhibiting those anymore in class. And his teacher would always shoot me an email. And her name is Miss Bauer at Mountain View Elementary School. She still does it. She'll say, hey, this specific thing happened today with Elijah. He is a leader. He was kind to his friends. Um, or, one of my goals for him was to make a consistent friend, because that's one of the things you're afraid of. Will they have friendships?
Right, right.
She had to take, some of his privileges away because he's talking and socializing too much. So she messaged me to say, Ashley, he won't stop goofing off with his friends, but we're gonna use
We're
that
going to
as a
keep
win.
working on that.
Yeah, we're gonna use that as a win, but we'll work on having him listen in class. But we're glad that he's engaging with others. So just her attitude about it was everything.
That's the perfect attitude, though. It's the communication between the adults that helps the child grow.
Yeah.
Um, eh, when you have to deliver bad news, I think teachers are always reluctant to do that, and so they try and defer that to their administrator. And often the administrator doesn't really know the student that well. And so it's better if you could schedule a meeting, have the parent come in and have those conversations and say, okay, now is this something you've seen at home? Is this new behavior? Let's work as a team. Let's try and resolve it. And then for you to try and put services in place to support.
Yeah.
And we can't be afraid to do that.
No, and work as a team. Our time is about to run out, but I wanted to wrap up with this question. Oftentimes, I'll ask families or parents, how can your community be a better ally to you as you support your child? But what I want to ask you, as a professional in the field, how can parents be an ally to teachers and administrators who are helping to support their children? How can parents better support you?
I would say volunteer.
Volunteer.
Um, be active in your schools.
Mhm.
Be part of all parent associations. Make sure you maintain all of your IEPs.
Mhm.
Um, and sometimes we have to review, and you need to review as well. If I'm going back to my office to review, then you need to go home and review and make sure that we're all on the same page. I think it's okay for you not to sign an IEP and to think about it for 24, 48 hours. Um, I think it's really important for, like I said, for you not to participate in that gossipy exchange of services in the parking lot. It's just not beneficial to anyone. Um, if you have a true complaint and that complaint is not being addressed at the school site, your district office is available.
Right.
Don't be afraid to go and register that complaint. And what you normally see parents do is they have a complaint at the school site, they go get an attorney.
Okay.
Um, there's some steps in between because
Yeah.
we could all have a happy median on those steps in between. And sometimes being aware that even your school personnel has bad days.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, they do. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, be aware of that. And not being afraid to speak up for your child.
Those,
I think it's okay for parents to be pit bulls for their children,
yeah. Yeah.
because if you're not, who will be?
Hmm. Hmm.
And to ask lots of questions, learn as much as you can about a disability. If it's autism, Ashley, you said it best. Don't be afraid of the label.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
is just that, a label. If
Yeah.
it's a cognitive delay, don't be afraid of it. And don't be afraid to ask the hard questions. If you think the psychologist is usually sitting in the meeting with you during those times when the determinations are being made, don't be afraid to say, so what does that mean? How
Yeah.
does it look? And so I think that is probably the biggest drawback for a parent, is it's a little bit intimidating. Everyone's sitting around the table and they're supposed to be an expert in their field, and they all have pens and paper. And I encourage parents, take a pen, take paper. You can write too. Don't be afraid. It's okay.
Yeah. Kim, thank you so much. This has been extremely helpful for me. And I know parents, it's helpful for them too, to hear from your perspective, your opinion, your thoughts professionally and personally. And I just want to thank you again for being on the Calm and Courageous podcast. I am so grateful. And I hope you have a wonderful day. It really blessed me. I know it's going to bless others.
Thank you so much. Thanks for inviting me.
Of course. Talk to you soon.
Talk soon.